start these sessions, you get a few people who just don't quite make it on time because they're running from one meeting to the next. But welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. This morning's session, I will cover a little bit of content, but I'd like this morning's session to kind of be a bit more experiential, an opportunity for you to kind of think about where coaching fits for you in your leadership positions in your organizations, and give you a chance to kind of discuss your approach to leadership at the moment, maybe some of the situations that you're facing and where coaching might help. And then we can kind of use that as context for the discussion in the session. But I really want to talk about how in terms of how we improve our leadership capability, where coaching fits, and why coaching is a fit, and how you can start to integrate it. And then there's a model that some of you may have seen, but today will be a good recap if you have seen it. We'll talk through the GROW model. And if somebody's game, I thought we might actually do a coaching experience this morning. So if someone's between now and when we get to that part of today's session, we've got an hour together this morning. Before we get to that session, if someone's got something, if you've got something that you're working on, either in your business or with your team, or there's something at the moment you're like, I could do with an external perspective on it, then I'd love to do a live coaching session today. I do a lot of that with clients anyway. So if somebody's got a topic, you don't have to say straight away, but have a think over the next 10-20 minutes. If there's something you think it would be useful for me to get some coaching on, I'd love to run that as a live coaching conversation today, just to give you an experience of it as well. But I also wanted to just kind of share my own personal experience of kind of developing coaching and why I found it important. So a long time ago, it's going to sound like a story, right? A long time ago, about 26, maybe 27 years ago, I got my first promotion to leadership position as a sales manager in an organization. And there was an assumption, because up until that point, I'd been quite good at sales and quite good at managing customers, and I was good at managing relationships in the business. There was an assumption that I'd make that transition into sales manager, and it would be quite straightforward, and I'd thrive as a sales manager as I did as a salesperson. And I made that assumption. The manager that appointed me made that assumption. I think a lot of people in the business did. And what actually happened was completely unexpected for me, at least. Perhaps not, as I explain it, perhaps not unexpected as I start to talk about it. But I went into this position and made this assumption that people thought the way I thought. I made the assumption that what I had done prior to that was like the only recipe for kind of success as a salesperson or as a key account manager, and went on then to kind of manage my team in a way that was very directive, very structured, and had this high anticipation around the behaviors, the attitudes, and the performance that I would then expect from them. And probably, I'm thinking, I had a team of about 8. 3 of the team actually I think, you have to ask them, 3 of the team actually quite enjoyed that approach. But the rest of the team actually found it quite painful. And over a period of time, and I wasn't very good at reading the signs, so I wasn't coaching, I wasn't using my intuition. And what transpired over probably an 8 to 12 month period was that the people that did enjoy working with me, really thrived, but those that didn't started to tune out. And after about 12 months, I made a decision along with the company that actually wasn't working. And so I stepped away from leadership and moved then into another role, which was a more strategic account management role within the business. But it was a really painful lesson. It was a painful lesson for a number of reasons, but mainly because the feedback from my team, and I sensed it as well, was that I wasn't a very effective leader. And it was a really very difficult position to kind of have, or process to have gone through. And after I had to accept that I wasn't managing the team and leading them the way that I perhaps should have been and could have been. And there was some other stuff going on, but I won't go into that. Ultimately, the responsibility was mine. So I then went away, kind of licked my wounds, recovered, went back into a position where I could thrive again, rebuilt my confidence. And then I always remember the manager who I was reporting to then he and I had a development conversation. He said, look, it may have been a difficult experience for you, Justin, but partly what had happened is, you just weren't prepared. So let's get you prepared in advance. So then over the next kind of 12 to 18 months, he enrolled me in a leadership development program. He then, within about 6 to 8 months, he then gave me a couple of direct reports. So I started to manage a couple of people. I learned, the big shift for me was learning about coaching. So I started to develop coaching skills. I went on a long-term coaching program. I was working in a group with other leaders who were learning how to coach. So I was learning at a peer level and learning through the work that I did with a couple of direct reports. And all of a sudden started to build my confidence. And I was then reading about leadership and starting to really immerse myself in what does it take to become a great leader. And that really kick-started my leadership journey. And probably, as I look back, if I hadn't had that failure, I may well not have been as good a leader as I ended up being long-term anyway. So whilst it was difficult, actually it was quite insightful as well. But the key for me then, when I got my next leadership assignment, I went in and I took a completely different approach. So it was less about me, it was more about the team. I was really interested in what they were trying to achieve. I was interested in their motivations. I was interested in, what it was that engaged them. I was asking them much more questions. And all of a sudden, that shift in me became a real shift in them and their performance. So my personal experience of this is, quite, for me, it was painful at the beginning, but it was a real light bulb moment. And from there, I've just continually evolved and improved my leadership and my coaching to the point where, 5 years ago, I retrained as an executive coach and then really started to understand the psychology of coaching, coaching leaders within organizations and how those leaders can then better coach their team. So that's kind of my story. So I kind of share that with you because it's personal and that's important for me, but hopefully that gives you context, because wherever you are in your leadership journey, you'll kind of relate to that either in your past or maybe for some of you in the present. And I wanted to start by kind of giving you the opportunity. I'll open up a couple of breakout rooms, just invite you to go into those breakout rooms and have a quick discussion with each other about where are you right now in your leadership journey? What's an area of focus or priority for you right now in your business? And then at the end of that conversation, if you can try and find a couple of themes, we'll invite you back, just talk about those themes, and then we'll kind of look at where does that fit with today's session and how can today's content help you in terms of mastering leadership coaching. And throughout that as well, if somebody's got a topic that they think, actually, this is an area I'd really like to discuss today, we can do a practical kind of coaching conversation. And from there, I can then explain, how do we go through that? How did it work? How's that sound as a session for today? All right, sound okay? Yeah, good. Everyone's nodding. I'll take consensus as a step to move on. So let me open, so let's start with the breakout rooms. Let me open up a couple of breakout rooms. Here we go. And you'll all get the chance, hopefully you'll all get the chance to meet somebody new. But if you don't mind, have a quick conversation. Where are you now? What are your areas for focus in this workshop today? Something that you're working on in your business that's a priority for you. And then when we come back, if in your breakout rooms, if you could also just kind of agree, if perhaps one of you would be kind enough just to play back the themes that you've discussed or the key priorities that you've discussed today. Okay, so I'll give you just under 10 minutes for this. We'll come back just after 10 to. So let's have 7 or 8 minutes on this. I don't want to labor it, but I'll give you 7 or 8 minutes, and then I will, and then we'll hear from you when you come back. And I'll join one of the rooms. So I'll join you in a second. Okay, enjoy the conversation. See you in a second.
I think we're both in a similar sort of situation where we're both kind of sales and have managed sales teams and are managing sales teams. I've got a pretty small team, and the individual in there, it feels like we're still trying to get to know each other and know what makes them tick. And that, I think, is the early way. I think once you know what makes them tick, you've got the advantage then of being able to know how to manage them best and how to move forwards. I think Mandy was saying, that she's moved onwards and upwards within the company. I'm speaking for you, Mandy, so feel free to chime in. and there's been an awful lot of change within that those sort of roles. So some of the things that she was talking about a year ago, it's difficult because of the change in personnel to know what's going to happen in 3, 6, 9, 12 months into the future, let alone up to the next 5 years. So both of us, I think, have got some challenges in terms of leadership and in terms of where we're going. But yeah, that's kind of what we were discussing. Anything to add, Mandy?
Thanks, Miles.
No, I think you've covered it, Miles. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mandy, you talked about one of your experiences actually similar to this experience I shared at the start of the session, didn't you? So we'll hopefully get the chance to kind of think about how you can get some support to address that through today's session. Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Mandy. Alex, Nadeem, Laura, Chris, I hope you enjoyed your discussion. Did you get to kind of decision about who might give some feedback?
No.
Alex, I believe.
Sorry, Alex, you gonna go?
No, Laura, go on, please, because you didn't quite finish yours, so we'll allow.
No, I don't need to finish mine. But what I took from listening to everybody else was very much this idea of this need to self-coach. So I call it the art of self-leadership. This idea that when you inherit a team that's not your own, that's quite young or has grown massively, that what ultimately happens is we can see ourselves slipping back into habits that are all about, we've got a deadline to hit, we've got this to do, and the empowerment of coaching slightly slips for more of a direct, we've got to get a job done, which obviously then leads to frustration and there's an impact. And so again, that's really coming back to this idea of self-leadership, because unless we're strong in ourselves, we can't lead others with the integrity, authenticity to get the results in the way that we want to do it, and thus coaching. So I think, would that be a fair summary of pretty much what we discussed?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. So self-management, self-leadership, and recognizing perhaps when we're not using coaching when we should be.
Yeah.
That awareness, and then how do you re-engage with coaching your teams?
Yeah.
I think there is that, but there's also how do you sort of force that behavior or push that behavior in times of pressure and deadlines and expectation, when you don't necessarily have the time. And I think the problem I have is that you associate coaching with being an incredibly long process, nurturing and shaping and empowerment and so on, which I think are all things I hold very dear to my heart. The question remains, actually, how do you do that if you simply don't have the time? Not only mean personal capacity in time, but I mean time frame to deliver results is shorter than the time you might want to have to be able to shape individuals. And how much opportunity do you then, of course, give those individuals to change through coaching?
Yeah, that's thanks, Chris. That's really good additional context, right? So the commercial realities of a business are that we have to meet commitments, and often those commitments require us to apply a certain level of pressure to people so that they meet those commitments, right? And we don't always think that coaching is the optimal way to do that, because short term we've got numbers to meet and commitments. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And everyone's nodding because everyone can relate to that pressure. And if we're all in sales or at least roles where we're responsible for numbers in the business, then that pressure is really easy for us to feel and sense. And then all of a sudden you kind of go into default directive mode, because it's a bit like, the high performer mentality. When you know what to do, the temptation is to tell people to just get on and do it. And that's a really good short-term fix. But then we create a trap for ourselves where we can't really evolve our thinking or elevate ourselves out of the business, because we get addicted, I think is probably the word, to giving that direction and kind of telling people what to do. Okay, it's good. That's great. Thanks, Chris. Really useful. Thank you, Laura. So let's talk about a couple of principles. I'd love to share a model with you just to kind of get you thinking about coaching. So when I trained, I trained as an executive coach. one of the things that I found really useful having gone through that training was that it broadened my perspective on what coaching is. So I felt as a leader when I was coaching that it was a series of coaching interventions and coaching conversations, rather than thinking about a framework for coaching and a structure by which I would coach, lead, and develop my teams. So I'll share the framework with you because as I developed it through this program with the Association of Executive Coaching, it helped me to get clarity. And I use this with clients, lots of different businesses that we work with now adopt this as a model, not just for individual coaching sessions, but thinking broader around how you coach and develop a team. So I'll just share a single slide with you because certainly I find it useful as a point of reference. So let me do that. I won't go full PowerPoint on you, but I will share the slide because I've found it kind of gives you context to the conversation today. So you've already started to talk about this. So at the heart of this model is developing trust and relationships, something Miles said, right? So Miles got someone in his team. He hasn't perhaps quite got the connection with that person yet. So maybe there's a part of the relationship that's just fragmented or disconnected. It hasn't quite got the trust that you need with that person. Either you don't trust them or they don't trust you, or it's both, right? But that's really important because trust sits at the heart of a conversation and a coaching process. If our teams don't trust us and we try and coach them, and even as I started to develop my coaching skills, there were certain people that it was more effective with than others. And as I think about it, the key differentiator was trust. So trust and relationships are really important. And then at the top, we start to think about having a plan, right? So we're clear on where we're headed in our business. We're clear on the strategic priorities. We're clear on the activities that drive success towards those priorities. And we're able to communicate it with the team, right? So we have a plan that we can communicate, and then we help our teams to build their plans and they're aligned with ours, right? So strategic clarity, really, and it's not something you do once. It's something we continually do with our teams. We reiterate, we refine, we engage and talk about so that people stay on track. And I don't know if anybody's read the business book Traction, but Traction's a really interesting book. And what they talk about in there is the fact that every 90 days, most people tend to drift off track. So if we're not reviewing and getting people back to strategic clarity every 90 days, they've already drifted. And for some people, it's quicker. So this whole idea of having a plan, knowing our priorities, talking to our teams about their priorities, making sure there's alignment and then reviewing regularly, it's not just a kind of principle. It's really important for clarity for us and for our teams. Chris, you got a question at that point? Feel free.
Yeah, just the whole plan thing. I think this is what's been tripping me up slightly.
Yeah.
My background, I'm used to working with experienced people who understand the principles of why a plan matters.
Yeah.
And they are willing to invest time and effort and maturity of perspective to establish a plan, a territory plan, for example, that aligns with organizational priorities, sales targets, yada, yada.
Yeah.
The thing which specifically what I was talking about in the team little huddle thing earlier was that when you inherit a younger team who are typically some folks who are in their first sales job, it's not necessarily that you can't teach them the importance of a plan, but what about the maturity and the experiences that's needed to have the capacity to actually build out a plan which is of the appropriate quality and maturity and that people actually then stick to and so on. And I think that's for me, the specific challenge is that how do you handle that with the kind of the Gen Z sort of generation that's now coming through into the workforce that are in some of these frontline roles, as it were.
Yeah. So it's a series of conversations, I would say, Chris, because one conversation probably won't be sufficient. Role modeling so that you demonstrate your plan and the importance of having your plan and how you follow it, because people do what we do, they don't do what we say. We know that, right? So if we tell them they've got to have a plan but we don't follow one, that's pretty simple next week. Well, Chris is doing pretty well without his plan. He tells me I've got to have one, but he's okay with it. So really that demonstration of why it's important, not explaining why it's important, is I think a key consideration. And then once you've got that once you've got the frame of a plan in place, work out what's most important to be in place within a plan within your teams, and then coaching them on that plan, coaching them to work to the plan, coaching them for accountability, because that's where you get the stickiness. So they're probably not going to get a perfect plan first time around, because as you say, they don't have the experience, but get the key building blocks in place and then coach them to deliver on the building blocks. And then they'll work out for themselves that they need to flesh out different parts of that plan to improve it. But I think we can fall victim to wanting to see a perfect plan straight away, when actually sometimes we need to get people right, get the framework in place, take some action on it, get out there and do some work, and figure out what does work as part of your approach, what doesn't work, and then you go back and fine tune the plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's cool. Thanks.
Yeah, that's all right. Pleasure.
The other thing, Chris,
Oh yeah, go on, Alex. Yeah, please. Yeah.
I've got something very similar. It sounds like we've got similar sort of things in there. And so what we've tried to do, or what I've tried to do this year, is set out that vision to everybody, regardless of the levels. And I've got some young people. I've also got some experienced people. I've got probably 3 in the 9 who are what I would classify as to the level and standard I would expect. But I've treated them all the same. This is what I expect. This is where we're going, and this is why we're doing it. So set that up. We then take them through an exercise of what's expected, of some examples of how they would go about planning. Okay. And then the national sales manager, then when they're out on daily field visits, is able to follow up on all those. And the key bits we're looking for is when people do things well. So we catch people doing things well, and then we highlight that to the rest of the group, and they get to see it. So it's a plan that's been executed on and gets a result. Right, so it's joining those dots up, and then that gets highlighted of really good practice. It's a little bit slower than I would like, never moves as fast as I would like, unfortunately, but that's the process. But it's treating everyone as a group, of saying this is what we're trying to do and this is why we're trying to do it. Here's how we would say it's being done, and then right, let's go ahead and do it. And if people are not doing it, then they're given the nudge. If they're not delivering on the numbers, we explain that part of it is because they don't have a plan, the vision, a goal, and all of that. And so it's a slow process. And as I found in mine, there are some people who just don't have that skill set. And it's not every Gen Z. Some people just don't have that skill set. And perhaps they're not right for the organization, the business, and the levels of standards we're setting and the direction we're going. Then you go into a different coaching conversation. Which I'm doing at the moment.
Very good, Alex. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Hopefully that's useful, Chris. It kind of starts to put context to it, live context. And I love what you said. A number of things you said there, Alex, in particular. Catch people doing great work and share and proliferate that great work, because so often it's really easy to just keep picking out the things that we want to improve, but actually things that are absolutely best in class, we should really be, championing those and spreading that across the team. Yeah, really, really good advice. Thank you, Alex. But it starts with Alex's clarity around the plan for the business, his strategic priorities, being able to communicate that, helping the team to see, right, where does my plan fit with the organizational plan or the leader's plan, so that you get that consistency. That's really good. Thank you, Alex. And then, so with the plan is it's a constant work in progress in my experience. We're continually refining that plan, sharing it, updating it, talking to the team about it, because none of our plans are going to be perfect. And there's that whole, I can't remember, one of the generals from I think it was World War II said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So we've got to reshape and continually improve. That's part of the planning process. But once the plan's in place, then we can hit coaching. And this model, I'm not going to labor it, but I will just talk you through it, because I've found that this distinction around the coaching process can be really useful. So rather than thinking about individual coaching conversations or interventions, which we'll talk about shortly, thinking about a broader context for leadership development and coaching. So this model is called the coach model. And it's a mnemonic, a bit like a number of models that we'll use in our businesses. And the first C is about contracting. And we won't go into this in depth today, but Miles, this might be useful for you. Contracting is a strategic agreement that you have with each member of your team about performance, standards, principles, expectations and objectives, attitudes, behaviors. So all the things that are important to get clarity on. and doing it at a point where that is the sole aim of the conversation, is to get that clarity on how you'll work together. And taking the time to have that conversation with your teams is really important, because it opens the door for them to give you feedback, for you to give them feedback, and it opens the door to coaching and setting clear objectives with them. But that strategic pillar can be really useful if you get that in place early on with people. Now, if you haven't got that in place, the time to do it is a bit like, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, second best time is today. So if you haven't got those strategic agreements in place, now is a really good time to do it. We're coming towards the end of the year. As you have those reset conversations and you prepare for 2024, it's a great time to have a strategic contracting conversation with each member of your team. And once the contract's agreed, so you have this agreement in principle with your teams, then you can start to work on objectives and goals. So what does each member of your team need to deliver in terms of objectives and goals? And how do you document that so that they are really clear? This is what high performance looks like in your role. And as a leader, as a coach, you're able to then coach them to that expectation around what they're due to deliver. And this, again, might take a little bit of reshaping and sharpening as you go through it. But once you get a clarity over, these are your core expectations to deliver in your role, here's what high performing looks like, then you've got something that you can coach and measure. And those objectives and goals once in place, then it's about investing some time in watching your team do what they do. So action and observation. So give them the space to act. Let them, go and see customers, or let them deliver in their roles, whatever it is that they're doing for you, and spend some time observing them. So allow them to do it and be the observer, because from that position of observation, you'll see things they can't see, and that creates opportunities for coaching. That's how we all improve, by somebody else helping us to see things we can't see. And coaching then is the intervention that helps us help them create the awareness to change, and hopefully has, through the structure, some motivation and techniques to change as well. And that's how we continually improve. And then the final stage in our process is about development planning and helping them to think bigger. We call it heroes in the making. It's about helping, I don't know if you've had this same experience, but I talked about that second experience after I'd been, I hadn't had a particularly good first leadership assignment. Then I had a manager, business director, who said to me, actually, Justin, with some coaching development, some mentoring, going on a program, taking you back a step, giving you a couple of direct reports, you can make this work. He saw something in me that at that time, I was struggling to see, but he helped me to see that there was a bigger, brighter future for me within that organization. Sometimes it takes someone else to do that. And as part of the leadership model, that can be really powerful for us to have those conversations with our teams to help them to think bigger for themselves. So that's the model, right? So contracting, clear objectives, action and observation, let the team do the job, coach them where you see the opportunities to coach them, not direct them, coach them, and then help them to build out a development plan that strengthens their capability today and their potential for the future. So, and I've gone through it in kind of 5 minutes, but you can see how as a structure, it becomes a roadmap to really help not just coach, in individual conversations, but to think about taking a coaching leadership approach right the way across that kind of relationship with each member of your team. And it becomes a kind of annual cycle through the whole program. But then you can kind of think, right, I'll have quarterly reviews, I'll have monthly check-ins, and all of a sudden you get this cycle that just connects you with your team and improves your leadership coaching and their performance. So that's the coaching leadership system. Now, I said earlier we will try and get time for a live coaching session. Is it from your conversation so far? Did anybody have a topic that they would be interested in having some coaching on this morning? You're all on mute, by the way, just so that you know.
It's not the mute that's the deathly silence, just.
So I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but also, if you've got something that is uncomfortable for you at the moment, it's a perfect topic for coaching. So it's entirely up to you. I mean, I don't want to force this, but sometimes it can be useful just to get an external perspective on it, and certainly through a coaching process. Anybody got something? If you haven't, it's not a problem, but you might have something that's niggling you think that could be useful.
There's nobody else volunteering.
Mandy, are you volunteering?
Well, I know if nobody else wants to, if anybody else has got something. So Justin, mine was similar to the scenario that you have. I've been seconded and I've championed someone into my role, which was the regional sales manager, and he's struggling. And I'm not managing him at the minute. I'm mentoring him, and I fear that by the time I get back, if I go back or whatever happens, that a few of the team might have left because it's just not working for them. They feel, he's just very much micromanaging them. He's not asking them. It's like, this is what worked for me, and this is what we're going to do, and it's trying to. He's very, when you look at insights and things, he's very red. He's all about just get the job done. It's your job, get it done.
Yeah.
He's not really, he doesn't have that awareness. That just because that's how he did it, there could be another way, maybe a better way of doing things. And he also seems things that he just doesn't think. It's just silly things that really upsets people. That a bit of the thought. You can see why people are upset about some of the things, and it's just to help him. He's doing a good job. He was brilliant as healthcare partnership manager. But I also think he's struggling. He's hiding that from me, and he's clearly hiding that from the person who's managing him. So when I speak to other peers, this chap's struggling.
Yeah. So he is 23-year-old Justin, right? Yeah, he's where I was in my first leadership assignment. He's gone in like a bull at a gate. He was good at what he did. He's kind of giving people direction. He's got a few casualties that he's picking off at the same time. He's probably not enjoying it himself, Mandy, I would think.
What's trying to do about 3 jobs? He's doing his old job, my job, and their job.
Yeah. Ah, yeah. Okay. So if you think about your perspective in this, then Mandy, what do you want? What do you think is the right outcome? What do you want to happen?
I want to help him, but I don't want to come across as, this is how I manage them. That's how you need to manage them. So because clearly, because that's how I did it. There's other ways and better ways. But I championed him to that position. I want to move on, and I want to move forward. I don't necessarily want to go back to that role. I want him to have that role, but I want the I want the team. It was a top team, and I want the team to continue to be the top team, and for him to do really well and develop into that manager role.
So you want him to be successful in that role and actually to lead that team in a way that they want to be led and is successful for him in the organisation. Before I go on to next question, sense check for you, Mandy. You championed him into the role. You've seen him operate in it now. Normally there's like it's either a kind of will or skill issue. Doesn't sound like it's a will issue. Has he got the basic? Has he got the ability to be able to change and do this from what you've experienced so far?
I think he's got the ability to change and do it. Now he wants to do it. He's very open to change, trying new things. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to say to me, as a manager, that he's struggling. He doesn't know what he's doing. But when I speak to other people, peers, or the team, and actually I try not to speak to the team because I don't really want to get involved at that level. But I want to be able to support him and help him.
Okay. So you're clear on what you want to do. You're clear on where you are right now. So what could you do? What could happen to support him?
Because I'm not managing him directly, I'm mentoring him. So So what could I do? I don't know.
So it's all right that you don't know. You've got some thinking space.
Never done. So previously I've had a conversation with the person that was managing them of the things that I've observed. In a place where the manager would have observed as well, and I've said, you know, I've observed this today, and it was where he was leading a group, and as part of him leading the group, he didn't let anybody else speak or get their opinions across. He just did it all.
Right.
So I said to them, and the manager said, yes, I observed that as well, and I've had a conversation with him about that. And there's been a couple of other things I've observed. Sometimes I'm maybe a bit hard on him because it's a bit like that whole family. You know, I've managed him for years. I really like him. I want him to do well. So I'm a bit hard on him as well, I think. So sometimes I've got to sense check. Am I being picky? If it was somebody else that was doing that, would it bother me? So I have that feedback. I've given him feedback directly, but then also as well when his manager's been there, I've had a conversation. Do you want me to give him that feedback? You're going to give him that feedback.
When you've had that conversation with him, Mandy, so you've given him the feedback, what happens then?
So I gave him the feedback, and he take it very well. So this was a while ago, and
He did or he didn't. Sorry.
He did very well. And then after about 2 days, he clearly thought about it and called me back and had I think I'd wounded easy go really, and had a conversation about it, and he wanted to talk some more about it, and you know, discuss various points he agrees and points he didn't agree. And we just had a conversation from there.
Okay. So he kind of resisted the feedback in the end after he thought about it?
So some of it he took on board and some of it he didn't. And then I felt from as a mentor, he kind of he stepped away a little bit. So that was then, I wasn't maybe giving him direct feedback, but when I observed, and if it was areas where his manager was there, I'd say to him, have you observed? If you think I'm out of line, or me. And I guess the situation we are now is his manager has, just resigns. And we'll get a new sales and marketing director who's been in the company 2 months, doesn't know him. She's now managing him.
Yeah.
So
let me pause for a second, Mandy. I'm just going to open up to the group and just say to the group, whilst we're talking about Mandy's individual situation, hopefully you can all start to see some themes, because the stuff we learn most from are other people's experiences. So as Mandy's talking through this, think about your own situation, your own teams, your own business, your own customers. So Mandy, you'll know one of the big things about coaching people is having that kind of clarity in the moment over the discussion and helping them to see it. And sometimes you have to give people feedback because they don't see it for themselves. But the really important bit is that they come to that realization, this is something I need to change, right? From what you've described, you gave him feedback. In the moment he took it, he went back and reflected, he came back, and then he went, this isn't something I need to change. So the intrinsic motivation to change doesn't sound like it quite happened with him. So there's that one piece. The second piece then, I think it's important, is once someone says, okay, this is something I need to change, it's then helping them to make the commitment to change it, so that they then say, yeah, this is the change I'm going to make. This is when I'll do it. And then you can then help them to say, okay, well, let's check back in so that I can help you make that change. Mm-hmm. And so I think there are two pieces in your conversation with him that maybe didn't quite land. So now that you kind of think about that, so now what other options have you got going forward? What do you think you could do?
I think one of the things that was, and again, it's difficult because I don't manage them, but one of the things we've discussed is for the kind of management team is that 360 feedback that we, because everybody's so new, and we've maybe suggested doing that with all the managers, so we weren't just picking on any one individual. So the feedback isn't just coming from me, so it is coming from his team.
So some 360 feedback so that he starts to create that awareness. Yeah.
But it's just creating the awareness. The other thing that I've done as well is when, and I try not to be involved, is when there has been a situation where one of the team members has confided in me, I try to coach them. You know, it's not down to me to sort it out. You need to have, you know, coach them to have that conversation with them. How he's made them feel. And I've done that a couple of times and that's worked. But it's but yeah, I think it's just we've just been thrown into more of a difficult situation because I said his manager has resigned and gone.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, how do we get from now to April when it kind of changes? He's out of the comment, and it's that we're in a position in the business now, and I think it was maybe Laura that said, you know, it's where that whole sales leadership piece is. We need to get this job done. We're behind target. But this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And he's in this place that he's doing 3 jobs: my job, his job, and their job.
Yeah. Laura's raised her hand. Thank you, Laura.
Just listening to what you're saying, Mandy, I just have this overriding sense of the question that needs to be asked is almost, what is going on for you? Because I'm getting this feedback from people, whether he agrees it or not is almost immaterial, because it's been said it's a fact per se. But it sounds in the fact that he is sitting in a meeting, not collaborating with anyone else in the room, it sounds to me as this person is actually, and you've just mentioned it's quite a new team, he's very fearful actually of his position.
Yeah.
And therefore it's trying to uncover or get him to have that conversation. And it's important that he recognises and gets to grips, what I call getting to grips with now. It could even be stuff that's going on at home. And what I was about to share with Alex and Chris earlier on, sorry, Justin, was that's what ultimately happened with my leadership 8 years ago, was there was stuff happening at home totally beyond my control. I was totally unsupported in the business, and I went into the dictatorial leadership style, probably wasn't collaborating, so I lost my sense of self-leadership, and I was probably the leader from hell, I dare say. Well, I just hid almost, and that's just being very honest about that. But I just hearing what you're saying about that, and my question would then be actually just taking him one side and say, look, you know, I'm trying to mentor you, I'm trying to support you, but actually, you know, this is the feedback I've got, because I think it sounds like you could do all the stuff, but if he's not got the instant self-awareness, then it's very hard. Having more 360 will just make him feel even more like he's not capable of doing the job, rather than saying, look, just where are you at? What is it? I call it puking on a page, for want of a better way of putting it. But, you know, just literally having that whole, this is where I'm at, can be a very liberating conversation for the person who just feels so overwhelmed that the only solution is to take control. So anyway, that's just my thought.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point, Laura. And I'll just add to it, Mandy. At the end of that period of time where I did that, I had that year, and then it was my current sales manager. So he and I had a conversation. I did exactly what Laura said. I said, I'm not enjoying this. It's you know, these people in the team aren't enjoying it. There's a big disconnect. I think I've demotivated them. I think, you know, whilst I've had some small successes over here, actually on the whole, I don't think it's working. And it was a massive relief for me. Now, equally, if I'd had a conversation where somebody had said, well, let's get you some development, let's, you know, take a step back for a moment, just take the pressure off yourself. You can succeed, but you're going to have to make some changes. If someone had gone through that process with me, I think it would have been equally valuable. but I needed to release the pressure. And it sounds to me like he maybe needs to release the pressure. I'm conscious of time. We're running right up to 1:30. This is like, it's like an episode of EastEnders. This can be like a cliffhanger, right? Because Mandy's going to take us off and do some stuff. And we're all like, how did that work out? Mandy, you're going to have to let us all know, right? But the final piece, to Laura's point, you know, that the model I showed, the contracting, to have a contracting conversation with someone about, you know, the need for openness, the need for transparency, the need for constructive feedback that might not be comfortable to hear, but is necessary to hear. You know, that maybe that's the piece you need to go back to with the sales manager and say, actually, let's be clear on our relationship and what I'm committed to for you. But in order for me to do that, I'm going to need you to do X, Y, and Z. And then you give him the chance. You give him the chance to open up, puke on the page, talk about what's really happening, so that you can address it. But whilst he's resisting, you're a bit stuck, both of you.
Yeah, I do. Laura, I think that is the issue. She's very fearful.
Yeah. Yes, fear. Yeah. He's fearful. Yeah, without a doubt. Right, good. Mandy, have you got a couple of actions there that you can take?
Yes. Yeah, you know, I definitely think it's important to think about it. It's just a problem to me, you know. Yeah. Being able to chat about it has helped, and a few things to think about and help me move forward. Thank you.
Good, pleasure. And I'm at the risk of just quickly sharing one more slide, if you don't mind. I just want to share this with you. So as I was going through the conversation with Mandy, I'm sure you all know the GROW model, but what I was trying to do as I went through the conversation with Mandy was focus her through this model. Now, the GROW model is the coaching model that helps people navigate any situation. So the G is the goal. You remember I asked Mandy, what's the outcome you're looking for? What are you trying to achieve? What do you want to happen? The R then was the reality. Okay, so what have you tried? Where are you? Then I said, okay, so what could you do? What are the options? What else could you do? As you think about the model, as you think about this, what could you do? And Laura sharing some ideas was useful, because that kind of gives you some options. And then the final bit is, okay, what will you do? What will you do now? And how will you just make sure that you're committed to do it? And that is the really important piece, because that's where action happens and change happens. Okay. So I've got some slides that I had for the session. I'm happy to share those with you guys. I'll send them onwards, and we've got a recording of this session if you would like to have access to it. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I appreciate we've run over, and apologies for just going over by a couple of minutes. I'd love to hear your feedback. How have you found this morning? How's it been as a session?
Good refresher for me.
Good.
Thought-provoking.
Thanks, Chris.
It's always nice to have that reset, isn't it? There's nothing new, but it's nice to have it again.
Yeah, thanks, Miles. Yeah, and thank you for your interaction, conversation with the group. I really appreciate it. That's great. I will also send you, as a follow-up to today, thanks everyone for your interaction today. It's been a really useful session. I'll send you a link. If anybody has got something in their business that's specific for them that you'd like to have a conversation, a bit like Mandy and I did kind of in the open group, if you'd like a specific conversation, like a one-to-one, feel free to drop me a note. In our follow-up email, I'll send you a link to my calendar where you can book a 45-minute one-to-one session. And then just a bit like we did today, coaching conversation. And if from there you think you'd like to explore further, we've got the option to do so. Okay. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Apologies, we went over a couple of minutes. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. Good luck with addressing your leadership challenges and priorities. And I'll hope to see you on a future session. All right.
Thank you, Justin.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you. See you.